Hello, everyone. Welcome. I can see that we have a bunch of people in the Zoom room. Hello. Welcome to the Stay True to Yourself reading with Aunt Lute Books. I am so excited to be in this Zoom room with everyone and to get to enjoy being read to by my favorite authors. My name is Emma. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Director of Acquisitions and Programming at Aunt Lute Books. And this event in particular honors the radical work of queer authors and queer literature as a whole, especially when the LGBTQIA plus community is so terrifyingly under attack these days. And so it's so meaningful to have everyone here. But before we can get into the magic of today's readings, I want to acknowledge that Aunt Lute operates on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and we wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, relatives of the Ramaytush community, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. This statement serves as an ongoing commitment to solidarity with the Indigenous and First Peoples here. I currently am located on Listrano Ohlone land. I'm in Oakland. And I encourage you all to pop into our chat to share the land that you are joining us from. Please, if you're in the Bay Area, pay your land tax. The Sagarayate Land Trust runs the Shumi land tax, and we'll include links to that in the chat. But it's how you can support their work of rematriating the land for the Ohlone. It's a beautiful project. Some announcements before we get going. This event is being recorded, and so it will be published online later this week. We'll send it out to all of those who have RSVP'd, and we'll publish it on Aunt Lute's website. We do have subtitles on, but if you're having any trouble following them, please send a message in the chat if you want any clarity on anything said. We'll do our best to make this experience as accessible as possible. Today is Give Out Day, which is a very special fundraising event for LGBTQIA plus organizations. It means that we can make more money today just for existing, which is a fantasy every other day of the year. So if you're able to, please donate. We have the link in the chat, or we will shortly. I think I have to enable the chat. But yeah, I think if everyone here donates $1, we're still able to get a huge chunk of money from Give Out Day just for having a variety of donors. So if you can spare $1, we love it. And if you're in a position to give more, we will also take that. But more importantly, if you enjoy what you hear today, being in these authors' worlds, please purchase their books, not just the ones we published. We'll have links in the chat throughout. And so without further ado, I want to welcome the fabulous Vickie Vértiz to the screen, who will be our MC for tonight. Vickie is the oldest child of an immigrant Mexican family. Her poetry and essays are featured in the New York Times Magazine, Huizache, the Los Angeles Review of Books, KCET Departure, San Francisco Chronicle, and then a ton of other publications. And her second book, Auto Body, won the 2023 Sandine Poetry Prize from the University of Notre Dame. She's a recipient of fellowships from the Mellon Foundation, Breadloaf Environmental Writers Conference, VONA, Cantomundo, and Macondo. And Vértiz teaches writing at UC Santa Barbara. She lives in Los Angeles. And just to add, she has a beautiful piece in the anthology Graffiti. And it's called Kissed a Girl, that I encourage everyone to read if you're looking for a light gut punch. Yeah, welcome, Vickie.
Hi, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Aunt Lute, and everybody who's here tonight. Felicidades. Yes, that story is about making out with my best friend and getting caught and listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers while all this happens in the mid-90s. And I have the courage to write things like that because of books like Making Face, Making Soul, like Borderlands, like Frontera, and the legacy of language that I was privileged enough to find in college when I found these books and these books found me. And it's a great privilege to be here to support Aunt Lute and to give everyone here the opportunity to continue supporting this legacy of language toward liberation. That's what writing is for. In my spirit, in my heart, where I do it is to repair, to imagine what else might be. And without places like Aunt Lute, where would we be in that sense? So please support and take this as an opportunity to continue this legacy that we need so much right now, given everything we're going through. So I'm so delighted to be here today to introduce our readers. First up is Ginny Berson. Ginny Z Berson is a longtime political activist driven by a longing for justice. She was a member of the Furies, a radical lesbian feminist separatist collective in Washington, D.C. that lived and worked collectively to develop lesbian feminist political thought and philosophy. After the Furies broke up, Ginny pulled together a group of women in D.C. to begin visioning and planning what would become Olivia Records, the national women's record company. She and her partner, the musician Meg Christian, were the initial driving force getting Olivia off the ground. Olivia produced records by Meg, Chris Williamson, BBK Roche, Linda Tillery, Teresa Trull, Mary Watkins, a poetry album by Pat Parker and Judy Grahn, and Lesbian Concentrate, a lesbian anthology in response to a rising wave of homophobia. After leaving Olivia in 1980, Ginny worked for many years in community radio at KPFA, Pacifica, and the National Federation of Community Broadcasters. She then spent 8 years as Director of Outreach for World Trust Educational Services, an anti-racist educational organization that produces documentary films, curricula, workshops, and trainings. Please welcome Ginny Berson.
Thank you, Vickie. And thank you, Emma. And thank you all for being here. It's really an honor for me to be able to do this tonight. And my book that Aunt Lute published is Olivia on the Record, a radical experiment in women's music. And I'm going to read from 3 different sections of the book. I'm going to start with the prologue. It's a cold night in December 1977 at the Oakland Auditorium in Oakland, California. Intermission has ended and the crowd of 2,000 has quieted as the band begins its set. The band is all women. Everyone working on this show, the stage manager, lighting designer, sound engineer, sign language interpreter, promoter, producer, childcare providers, and the entire crew is a woman. And at the end of the show, everyone will be paid. There are 2 long sets per half, actually 4 short sets each. The 4 short sets are performed by Meg Christian, Teresa Trull, Pat Parker, and Chris Williamson. The band is led by Linda Tillery, whose newly released album we are celebrating. It's the second night of this sold-out event. The first night was billed as especially for women, but even on the second night, there are far more women than men. Tickets went for $4.50 and were sold in women's bookstores all over the greater Bay Area. The concert is wheelchair accessible, which is not the norm in 1977. This was an Olivia Records event, and all these women recorded for Olivia. Olivia Records was a national women's record company founded by a group of lesbian feminists in Washington, D.C. in 1973. We were determined to change the music industry, but more than that, much more than that, we were determined to change the world, to overthrow the patriarchy and capitalism, to end racism and imperialism, to create a world where peace and justice and equity were not just words, but were righteous ideas to be embodied inside ourselves and fought for in the world. Feminism was not a laundry list of issues for us. It was a different way to understand and use power, to benefit the whole, not to advantage the few. Yes, we wanted lots of things on that laundry list, and we wanted more. What we did would prove to be important. How we did it was just as important. As I stood in the back of the concert hall on that night in December, I believed that this show, with these Black and white women on stage, with these women of all races and backgrounds working behind the scenes, was another step on the road towards our lesbian feminist revolution. We had big dreams, some might say ridiculous dreams, and what seemed like very dark and dangerous days. Richard Nixon was stirring up fear and resentment towards Black people, college students, and anyone who didn't agree with him. The war in Vietnam was still raging and thousands were dying. J. Edgar Hoover was using the FBI to infiltrate and help destroy radical political movements like the Black Panther Party, and who knew who else. We had a vision that we held onto tightly and expressed constantly in every way we could. We made big mistakes, and we learned from some of them. We kept moving. We had our hearts broken, and we kept going. We were lesbians, and we did the unthinkable. We centered our lives on women. The story people were told in the 1970s by the government and mainstream media about women's lib, as they insultingly called it, described the movement as a bunch of white, middle-class, suburban women who really just wanted their husbands to help more around the house. But there was a part of the women's movement of the 1970s that was visionary, revolutionary, anti-racist, and very grounded in women's real needs and aspirations. We understood that culture and politics were not separate, that each was informed by the other, and when consciously united, created a much more powerful force for change. We were going for hearts and minds. We did not want a piece of the pie, which we considered poisoned, contaminated by greed and the need to dominate. We wanted a whole new pie, filled with love and justice and with enough for everybody. That is the spirit in which we created Olivia Records. This is the spirit behind this musically disjointed concert we produced in 1977. This is the story I am about to tell. So my partner or lover at the time, as we called it, was Meg Christian, who was a musician. And when I need to say one thing, there's going to be some names that are mentioned. The original collective was Judy DeLugach, Kate Winter, Jennifer Woodall, Meg Christian, and me. So you're going to hear some references to names. That's who they are. When Meg and I went on the road in the early and mid 70s, we would likely do a concert, recruit and or meet with distributors, sit for interviews with the feminist press and the women's radio shows, go to a women's community potluck dinner, meet with the concert production collective immediately before and or after the concert, and conduct a workshop the day after the concert. A lot of this work was pretty grueling for Meg, who when she wasn't on stage was really an introvert. But she was a trooper, and more than that, she was determined to act like and be seen as a regular person who had talents and skills that were different from, but not better than or more valuable than any other woman. So she joined in almost all the extra concert activities, even if somewhat reluctantly at times. I, on the other hand, was in heaven. What the right wing said about us was true. We did have an agenda, and I was always recruiting. I got to talk endlessly with women about our vision and our values, and I felt like I was Ginny Appleseed, spreading the gospel of lesbian feminism. I led workshops on how collectives work, how Olivia raised and spent our money, and how we thought about money, the importance of women-only spaces, what it meant to start a feminist business, how to understand class, and how to include more women of color in the women's movement. On our tours, we were not just selling records and we were not just promoting Meg. We were selling Olivia, not as a brand, but as a set of politics, and we were building community. Women wanted to be connected, not necessarily to Olivia, but to some piece of this fast-growing movement. Some approached Meg with songs they thought she might include in her repertoire, and sometimes she did. Some came to workshops to find out how to start a concert production company, and we ended up working with many of them. Others came to find women in their community who were also on fire about feminism and lesbianism and making big changes. In Pittsburgh, the concert was at the YMCA. I was sitting behind the mixing board watching the crowd, and I noticed one of the concert organizers standing in the back of the room crying. I approached her cautiously, with no idea what could be wrong, but a lot of anxiety. She tried to staunch the flow of tears, but instead she started sobbing. "Look at this," she blubbered. "This is my community. This is the first time I've seen us all together. I'm so happy I could cry. Oh, and then she started to laugh. I guess I am crying. Salt Lake City. We had amused ourselves for hours with stories about Mormons and lesbians. Will they run us out of town? Will we inspire a rebellion and run them out of town? Will we turn into pillars of salt? We were actually a little nervous about the concert. Will anybody come other than the 3 women who are producing it? In a rare moment of extravagance, we decided to go out to dinner. We chose a restaurant on the main drag, and we were shocked to see that every single person eating dinner was a woman. Had we stumbled upon Salt Lake City's secret lesbian gathering place? The women didn't really look like lesbians. They were all wearing dresses and seemed a bit frumpy, but still, maybe this was what they had to do to survive under the watchful gaze of the Mormon church. Alas, we learned when we met up with our hosts that this was not a secret lesbian restaurant. There was a big church meeting that night, and only men were allowed to attend, so lots of wives took themselves out to dinner. They didn't show up at the concert, but over 100 brave feminists and lesbians did. Meg and I left Salt Lake the next day and did not look back, just in case. In retrospect, so much of our strategy was ridiculous on its face. We wanted to get past the defenses and into the hearts of straight women everywhere. We believed, at least for a while, that if they could just hear the music, they would leave their men, march in the streets, and stand with us as we overthrew the patriarchy. So we tried with great seriousness of purpose to gain access to and attention from radio stations, record stores, top-notch nightclubs, and taste-making music reviewers. At the same time, we were openly contemptuous of the radio stations, record stores, top-notch nightclubs, and taste-making music reviewers, and were doing everything we could think of to render them powerless and irrelevant by building up alternative feminist institutions wherever we could. It is no surprise that we didn't accomplish these goals and that we drove ourselves a little crazy in the attempt. This chapter could be called by one of the 2 aphorisms we invented and like to bandy about. Process is our most important product. This came to me from an ad for General Electric, which said, progress is our most important product, or struggle is hard, that's why we don't call it fiesta. That was Jennifer Woodall. Between March 1975, when we arrived in Los Angeles, and October 1977, when we moved to the Bay Area, we recorded 6 albums, released 7, and were in production on an 8th, which was going to be Linda Tillery's. We had published songbooks for I Know You Know and Changer. We were distributing albums by many other women artists. Our artists were touring pretty constantly, and we were booking the tours, road managing, and usually conducting post-concert workshops. Our distribution network had grown to over 60 women, and they were selling records in big and medium-sized cities and small towns all across the US and Puerto Rico. We were in New York and Pocatello, Albuquerque and Vermilion, South Dakota, Chicago and Chico, and lots of places in between. Needless to say, our original group of 5 had grown, but our principles of working non-hierarchically, making decisions collectively, and valuing all work equally remained in place. In a never-ending quest to find the perfect structure, we had created a living collective that was separate from the working collective, added women to the working collective, and brought in women who wanted to work with us but didn't want to be in the collective. The original 5 still constituted a living collective in which we shared whatever income we had, as well as our cars and other big ticket items, and we all took the same draw. When new women started working with us, they were offered the option to join the living collective. Some declined and some accepted. When Teresa Trull arrived, a white working class woman from North Carolina, she immediately joined the living collective, and to her, it represented her first experience of financial security. The collective paid our rent, food, medical bills, gas, and cars. And at one point in the fall of 1976, our personal draw increased to $15 a week. Teresa thought this made us all equal until she noticed that some of the middle-class women were getting large gifts from their families. She remembered one of us getting a color TV. We might all use these things, but they belong to only one person. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make things equitable and not just equal. We didn't just want everyone to have the same things as everyone else. We wanted everyone to get what she needed, and that meant some would have more than others. We were in the middle of a huge growth spurt on every level, which was thrilling and terrifying as we tried to navigate our way through advanced capitalism, systemic racism, misogyny, homophobia, and centuries of patriarchy while following a feminist path. Not exactly a piece of cake. We processed endlessly and we struggled about everything. It was extremely important to us that we make the right decisions. It wasn't just that we were under intense scrutiny from about half the lesbians and feminists in the country, many of whom were waiting for us to screw up. We also believed. We believed that every decision, every action, every word out of our mouths should reflect our values. But what to do when we had conflicting values? Process, process, process. Struggle, struggle, struggle. We had a lot more meetings and there were a lot more voices. We had been deliberate about how we were expanding. So the women of Olivia now included Black women, white working class women, women even younger than us, a couple of straight women, a trans woman, and one older woman. And one older woman. We did not want the musicians we recorded and produced to be thought of or treated like stars. The musicians had control of their music and their records, but they got paid on the same basis as everyone else. For many years, Meg would not sign autographs until she finally got tired of explaining why her signature was not more valuable than the person asking for it and gave in. We did not want to glorify the musicians. At the same time, we understood that selling records was how we planned to finance the revolution, and it was the musicians who sold the records. At the end of December 1976, as we were readying Teresa's album for release, we spent 2 days in meetings trying to come up with a policy on using the images of the featured musician. From my notes on the first day of the meeting, long discussion followed about images, promotion, star trips, etc. Or in other words, the promo committee idea of the Teresa poster, which was a 17 by 23-inch poster with a full picture of Teresa, raised an eyebrow here and there about whether it was star trippy. Points were raised about whether the whole concept of putting one woman on album cover is star trippy. Questions raised about whether nature of photo, nature of performer is what makes a difference. I.e., is the actual photo of Teresa that's going on the album cover was generally agreed to be not star trippy, so was putting it on the poster by itself, without the actual cover, just another degree of the same thing, or is it actually promoting Teresa and not the album? How much do our album covers reflect our politics anyway? How much can they and still be useful in selling records? We all got hysterical at the meeting, lasting 3 hours, so we decided to meet again tomorrow. Jennifer reported on the second meeting. Liza, who we had just hired to do some marketing with us, Liza says it's not necessary to sale of records to have artist picture on the front. That, in fact, if we're promoting the music and not the person, it'd be better for to use other art. She points out that it's a good way to make women's art accessible additionally. She says it's particularly irrelevant to use artist images on the first album of a little-known artist. Mary Watkins points out that it is this person who's representing the message we're trying to get out, and that we have no control over who's going to star Trip Teresa. Judy DeLugach feels that a main point is that the picture is not star trippy and offers a strong image, and that it's very attractive and will help sell albums. Kate talks about objectification, that regardless of how the picture is, repeated use eventually makes it a caricature of the person. After a long and painful discussion, we are unable to make a policy. Feel that each case must be individually considered in light of what it conveys graphically. Consensus, however, that the connection between this picture and the title of Teresa's album, The Ways a Woman Can Be, is at best tenuous, and that the title has more potential than that. Kate and Teresa will work on a better cover. A few days later, Judy was not satisfied with our decision, and she sent a letter to everyone. When I look at that picture as it sits in front of me, I see a very wonderful image. It's a terribly warm, loving picture that would say to any straight woman looking at it, it's safe for me to listen to this. In a world where album covers have become totally disgusting images of women being raped or liking being sex objects, a photo like this is an incredible contrast. The image is not all the alternatives, but at least it is expressing one that never gets seen. This is not your typical woman identity on album covers. I do not see a star in this picture. I see regular, and that's who Teresa is, so it's okay with me. The great irony here is that for Teresa Troll, the unknown artist, we used the artist's picture on the front. For Linda Tillery's, we used women's art. That was Linda's choice. Linda was well known to R&B lovers, especially in the Bay Area, having put out a couple of albums with mainstream labels. And it would have been easier to promote the album if people had seen her face on the cover. Instead, her picture appeared on the back. And just to punctuate this sentence, this is Teresa's album, The Ways Women Can Be, and this is the picture about which we argued for 3 days. And this is Linda Tillery's cover, which we did not argue about at all. And that is the end of my reading, and I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to turn it back to Vickie.
Bravo. Yay. Thank you, Ginny, for that great reading. Just a reminder, I can you see this in the chat, but there is a link to donate, and it's in the chat, so you can keep supporting wonderful queer literature like you are hearing tonight. Our second reader is Julián Delgado Lopera, who is the author of the New York Times acclaimed novel Fiebre Tropical. Winner of the 2021 Ferro Grumley Award and the 2021 Lambda Literary Award, a finalist of the 2020 Kirkus Prize in Fiction and the 2021 Aspen Literary Prize. Julián is also the author of Cuéntamelo from Aunt Lute in 2017, an illustrated bilingual collection of oral histories by LGBT Latinx immigrants. Their work has appeared in Granta, Teen Vogue, the Kenyon Review, McSweeney's, The White Review, among others. They are the former executive director of Radar Productions and one of the founders of Drag Story Hour. Born and raised in Bogotá, Colombia, Julián resides currently in San Francisco.
Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here. Ginny, thank you so much for that wonderful reading. I really enjoyed it. I'm just going to be reading from Cuéntamelo, which was published by Aunt Lute. The book was first self-published a long time ago. And then I ran into Joan once and she was like, what happened with that book? And I was like, nothing. I don't have the capacity to keep doing this on my own. So she was gracious enough to just like kind of take this book. So I'm forever grateful. So it's a bunch of different oral histories, mostly of my queer family. 2 people in here have already passed away. So I'm going to read excerpts from 2 of them. And they come with illustrations and photographs. And it's in English and Spanish. So Nelson de Alerta, born in Isla de Pinos, Cuba. Date of arrival to the US was 1980. Catherine is my woman name. And when Catherine arrives, I say, por tu vida, she is here. Sometimes people ask about her. She's on vacation, I say. She's too much. I love her, but sometimes she's too much. She does things I would never do. She stops traffic. She talks to policemen. ¿Qué tal? How you doing today? What's going on? Makeup all over her face. A little drunk with a huge bag, going around to different bars. I am very particular. If I'm not comfortable in character, I'm not doing it. But if, let's say, I put on a big feathery hat and go out into the street, I feel gorgeous. The other day, my friend told me, you don't do drag, you just dress as a rich woman. It's something really interesting. When a man, gay or straight, wears a wig and high heels, there's a spell cast around him and everyone wants to see it. I never had a closet because my mom always said to me, you are a fag. She dragged me to a psychiatrist during the 1960s because as a kid, I wore high heels. I would steal my mother's clothes and go out into the streets in women's garments, which is why in 1970 I was sent to jail, taken to court dressed as a woman, and hell went down in La Habana. I'm from a small island, Isla de Pinos. I lived there until I was 10 years old and I moved to La Habana. When we arrived in La Habana, my grandfather took me to the opera to see Aida. He held my hand tight, saying, "This is going to be your home. You're going to come back here many times." I was shocked because theater has truly been my life, dressed in a gown as a woman, never as a man. I remember thereafter dancing ballet in front of my grandfather, and one day him saying I was fantastic, that I just needed to straighten my fingers a little more. He said, "Ballet is totally your thing." In high school, I dyed my hair. I wore truly scandalous outfits and big sunglasses. I sewed on the bus, my face all done weirdly like a woman. I wore bras and panties. Tell the boys on the bus, "I'm wearing a bra, you want to see it?" They go crazy. They didn't know what to do. I mean, this was the 1970s in Cuba. Marquesa was my first gay friend. We met in La Habana, and oh my God, when I first saw her all dressed in black, covered in white makeup, she looked like Dracula. She told me, "I am Marquesa." And I told her, "What you are is my friend, carajo." We used to perform in the middle of the bushes in the midst of passing goats and animals, the space filled with faggotry and just the boombox. I was a drag queen in Cuba when faggots were outlawed. All that hatred towards homosexuals in Cuba during the 1970s was also promoted by teachers. In 8th grade, I couldn't handle it anymore, so I dropped out of school. I am an artist. ¿Qué carajo matemática ni una mierda? Y no te creas, I have an amazing education. I speak various languages. I can talk about painting, literature, music, whatever you want, physics. I didn't go to school, not because I didn't want to, but because they didn't let me. To be a faggot in Cuba during the 1970s was the worst thing you could be. The government went all over the world looking for ways to end homosexuality. They even opened a concentration camp called UMA in Camagüey. When you signed up for the military draft, they picked out anyone who was an outcast, not just homosexuals, but anyone who could be related to this group, and send them to the UMA. You couldn't wear shorts, a certain kind of sandal, long hair. I have schooled myself, not because I want to, but because I had to. We came to this country from such a repression, honey. Once, still in Cuba, Marquesa and I were waiting for lunch when this crude castrista, this guy that's a pedestrian, started hitting us with cables. Marquesa's leg was cut all open, tissue and everything out. She was very religious, and while I poured vinegar on it, Marquesa said, "Ay, Caterina, I am just like Christ. This is just like Christ." "I know, niña," I said. "What Christ?" She said, "I am a very Catholic woman." I told her, "Catholic? What we have to do is leave this place." In 1980, I arrived in Miami on a Monday. I was part of the 10,000 people who congregated at the Peruvian embassy in La Habana. There was an advertisement in Cuba at the time that completely shocked me. This bold dictator saying, "The safest route to Miami is via Mariel." I couldn't believe it. At the end of the news program, Castro decided to change history. Prisons and mental hospitals were open, and millions of Cubans arrived in Miami. They had us at the Orange Bowl in a refugee camp. And when I got there, a man helped me find a job, a gay man, an intimate friend of Reynaldo Arenas, Daniel Fernandez. And for the record, Reynaldo Arenas is an acquaintance of mine because he was a tremenda hijeputa. We passed each other randomly on some stairs one day, and when she saw me, she said, "But what a fierce faggot." And I told her, "And you, niña?" I didn't even know who he was. So I tell Daniel Fernandez, I am a drag queen, a transformista. And he told me, "Tú sí la bateaste. People come here asking for all sorts of jobs, but drag queen." Then he said, "All right, come on Wednesday and I'll look for a job on the beach for you." There were 2 bars on Miami Beach at the time, and Scarface sold cocaine, and all the locas dressed up in disco stuff and their beards. We shaved, and when we dawned at the hotels near downtown, we said to each other in the morning, "Niña, had that beer." I had grown out my beard in Cuba so I wouldn't go to prison, so I looked more heterosexual. I kept the envelope of my first payment in 1980 of $75. I started working on a Monday in the most famous show in Miami. Imagine, I had just arrived. I was still salty. And when I was up on stage doing my number, a song by the Italian singer Mina, The bar went nuts. It looked like a political uprising. Cuba, Cuba, Cuba. And all the locals afterward asked me, but who are you, niña? Because I was very famous in La Habana. I had a ballet company and all the faggots knew who I was. That year, I was almost killed during Gay Pride in Miami. There were a few of us in the parade, seriously, like 3 people and some Cubans. And I was gorgeous with a great black dress and a blonde wig. All of a sudden, a man with a stick came up to me wanting to kick me. I walked away from the parade and this person was coming towards me with a thick stick. So I literally jumped inside a moving car. The man driving it froze in shock when he saw the kind of lady sitting in his car. He yelled, "You got to get out, you have to get out." And I said, "I'll get out on the next block." He drove a few blocks and then I ran and I saw my fellow faggots on the street. So a bunch of other stuff happened. He goes to Dallas, he comes to San Francisco. I've had the privilege in this life of living, continuing to live both worlds. But when you dress as a woman, when you remove your pants, you realize the power men have given to pants. Not even faggots want to drop their pants, because when you remove your pants, you lose power. Y yo me resingo en el coño de la madre del pantalón. I wear skirts, panties, and I have balls and a dick bigger than everyone. You need balls to put on a pair of high heels and a dress and go out onto the streets. Whoever you are, you need strength to do that. But hello, I'm a free spirit. I don't have sex, don't even question it. I was never in a suit though. I've only had one suit in my life because in Cuba you had to attend the ballet in a suit and a tie. But my thing is the dress and being a drag queen. I think transformismo is a marvelous gift. Latin American transformismo is special because it has certain passion, a tumbao, a different flavor. I'm not sure what it is. I've been so lucky in my life. I could talk to you right now. I believe in Buddhism and I think this is my last reincarnation. So I'll stop there with Kati, and Kati is one of my aunts. And I'll read briefly Adela, who is my mom. And Adela was born in Camagüey, Cuba, and arrived here on May 8th of 1980. On my 13th birthday, I asked my grandmother to go to the movies. Of course, I didn't go to the movies. I went walking around downtown, figuring out where all the locals hang out and come away. At around the Casino Campestre, a park with plenty of fountains, I had seen a few locals, a few faggots, a few people who I know to this day. La Georgia, La Miami, and some other weird locals. Those were my first contact with Cuban faggotry. At the time, What's Up Doc with Barbra Streisand had just come out, and I was wearing the same Sherlock Holmes hats, looking like a total hera. I would cruise in my beige bell-bottoms, a flower blouse, and that little hat sewn by my grandmother. Downtown, there were different areas where all the faggots congregated, and little by little, I came out looking for them because I remember I was still in boarding school. The Casino Campestre had a fountain in the shape of a swan that spat water out of the beak, and there, all the locals would get baptized. An older local will baptize you. She wet your hair and forehead, pull your head back and pray. With this water, we're turning you into a faggot. I was baptized as La Chica Terremoto. My godfather became a bugarrón named Candelita, and my godmother another loca. We were 14, 15 years old, sitting at the park, modeling all the clothes that we had. And now comes Fulana with that stunning dress. In our heads, it was wonderful. During March of 1980, the problem with the Peruvian embassy was happening in La Habana. There were rumors that people were already leaving for the US to Miami. Wasting no time, some locals and I went to La Habana directly to a government office where we were told to return to Camagüey because each city was going to open its own immigration office. We went back that same night and got ready. I went out into the street and recruited all the faggots. Niña, tomorrow they're opening the office to go to Miami. The next morning, I was one of the first people to show up very early at immigration. When the office opened, the workers couldn't believe all the locals outside. They told me I needed a paper to prove that I was a homosexual. So I went with mommy to the military draft office because I already had that kind of paper. In Cuba, when you turn 16, it is mandated to sign up for military service. You show up to a stadium packed with thousands of boys who remove all their clothes and place them in a bag. And I had planned all of this for the day. I went and shaved my legs, borrowed one of mommy's panties, and when all the boys stripped themselves naked, I left my panties on. The man checking everyone asked me, why don't you take that off? And I said, because I'm not going to be naked in front of these boys. Immediately, he sent me to psychiatry, where another man looked at me with a smile and a big, oh, came out of him. Then he said, you know, this is the military, not the Confederation of Cuban Women, right? He stamped my identification with a big homosexual. And that was the paper I took to get my passport as proof that I was a homosexual so that I could leave Cuba. And I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you, Julián. It's so important to document our chosen families' lives. It's just one of the important roles that Aunt Lute has in the world. And you will hear my baby crying in the background, and likely a dog, just in case you hear that. That's what's going on. Our third reader is Judy Grahn, who is an internationally known poet, writer, and social theorist. She serves as executive core faculty and co-director of the Women's Spirituality Program at Sophia University in Palo Alto, California. She also teaches creative inquiry and creative writing in the Writing, Consciousness, and Creative Inquiry program at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, where she earned her PhD in Integral Studies with an emphasis in women's spirituality. Her work has won several awards, including an NEA grant, American Book Review Award, 2 American Book Awards, American Library Award, Lifetime Achievement Award in Lesbian Letters, a Founding Foremothers of Women's Spirituality Award, and an Independent Publisher Book Award. The Publishing Triangle, an association of lesbians and gay men in publishing, established an award in her name, the Judy Grahn Award, recognizing the best nonfiction book of the year that resonates themes and issues affecting lesbian lives. Please welcome Judy Grahn.
Thank you, Vickie. It's such a pleasure for me to be part of this group, which feels like it's passing traditions along and learning new ones. And I come from an old one, or older anyway. And I want to start out by reading a poem that I wrote. I was trying to understand the word dyke, which I had been called as a lesbian. Oh, incidentally, it's not incidental, but I'm on Ohlone land, south of San Francisco. Grateful for all of the trees, waters, and creatures that are still here, and with the assistance of indigenous wisdom and environmentalists that will stay here. And gratitude to Aunt Lute, which published 2 of my books. This is my memoir, A Simple Revolution. And the one that I'm going to be reading from is the Judy Grahn Reader. I shared Ginny's movement, so what she said about what the institution she was doing pertains to me, and one that I founded, the Women's Press Collective in the San Francisco Bay Area and Oakland. So a poem about the word dyke before I had done any research on it. I am the wall at the lip of the water. I am the rock that refused to be battered. I'm the dyke in the matter, the other. I am the wall with the womanly swagger. I'm the dragon, the dangerous dagger. I'm the bull dyke, the bull dagger. And I've been many a wicked grandmother, and thou shalt be many a wicked daughter. It's from my time in gay bars and the courageous people who populated them, including some bull daggers and, of course, lots of drag queens. I really resonated with Julián's drag queen auntie. This is a preface to a book that was published in 1984 that I researched. Just sort of had been desperate to save my own life and those of all the people that I knew who were in so much trouble in the 60s. And by the 80s, I had enough time that I could explore. So this is a preface to that. It's called Another Mother Tongue. It came out in 1984, and we're going to reissue it pretty soon. In 1961, when I was 21, I went to a library in Washington, D.C. to read about homosexuals and lesbians, to investigate, explore, compare opinions, learn who I might be, what others thought of me, who my peers were and had been. The books on such a subject, I was told by indignant, terrified librarians, unable to say aloud the word homosexual, were locked away. They showed me a wire cage where the special books were kept in a jail for books. Only professors, doctors, psychiatrists, and lawyers for the criminally insane could see them, check them out, hold them in their hands. The books I wanted to check out were by experts, so-called, on the subject of homosexuality as it was understood at the time. The severe reaction of the women librarians, who by all rights should have been my allies, plus the censorship of the official professional written material of which my own person was the subject, constituted some of the serious jolts I experienced in my early 20s concerning the position of gay people in American society. These jails, which included being given a less than honorable discharge from the armed service, with its attendant demoralizing treatment, having my parents and friends notified of my, quote, crime of lesbianism, being denied jobs and housing, being beaten in public for looking like a dyke. These taught me everything I would ever need to know about the nature of the oppression of gay people, and made me angry and determined enough to use my life to reverse a perilous situation. In 1963, I picketed the White House with the gay rights group Mattachine Society, one of a little band of 12 or 15 gay people, 3 of us women. In 1964, I published an article in Sexology magazine under a pseudonym, stating that most lesbians were not sick, but were normal, ordinary people. Since my lovers and, since my letters and notes had been seized and used against my friends in the service, I was afraid, even in civilian life, of having my writing notes grabbed. I burned some cards I had been keeping about lesbian couples in Washington, D.C. And then in 1965, I wrote an angry satire, The Psychoanalysis of Edward the Dyke, storing it away because of the impossibility of getting it published. I did publish a few short poems, also under a pseudonym, in the lesbian underground magazine, The Ladder. In 1970, tired of waiting for a publisher radical enough to handle my material, I printed poems myself on a mimeograph machine, which grew into a complete productive press. As the wave of gay liberation, lesbian and feminist groups became the huge groundswell of organized transition that characterized the 70s, on the heels of the civil rights and Black Power movements and the peace and hippie movements of the 60s, I became a poet and a voice of lesbian feminism and, quote, the common woman, unquote, among other things, title of a set of my poems. In 1974, after writing A Woman is Talking to Death, I began to work on long prose pieces. I decided to investigate women's history and gay history. In finding and recording some of the gay cultural histories I have drawn upon, my own life history as a lesbian and as a gay activist during the last third of the 20th century in America. I have recalled my utter isolation at 16 when I looked up lesbian in the dictionary, having no one to ask about such things, terrified, elated, painfully self-aware, Grateful was there at all, feeling the full weight of the social silence surrounding it, me, my unfolding life. I have gone over and over in my mind the careful teaching that my first lover, Vaughn, gave me as she recited in strict secrecy the litany of words and phrases related to the forbidden subject of our way of being: gay, faggot, tributism, round, straight, drag, coming out, and queer. In addition, I have remembered words and phrases used about gay people by heterosexual culture. The list I made to research consisted originally of 12 words: dyke, queer, butch, femme, gay, camp, fairy, faggot, purple, pansy, bull dyke, lesbian. I have used both dyke and its alternate spelling, dyke, D-Y-K-E and D-I-K-E, because I love both of those words. In fact, I love all of those words. Women at that time, in that era, were known as girls. There were men and there were girls. So I wrote this: I'm not a girl, I'm a hatchet. I'm not a hole, I'm a whole mountain. I'm not a fool, I'm a survivor. I'm not a pearl, I'm the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not a good lay, I'm a straight razor. Look at me as if you had never seen a woman before. I have red, red hands and much bitterness. And someone embroidered that on a tea towel, and then gave it to me, to my delight. This is the psychoanalysis of Edward the Dyke that I wrote in 1965, the first version of it, and couldn't get it published. And it is still in print. Behind the brown door, which bore the gilt letters of Dr. Merlin Knox's name, Edward the Dyke was lying on the doctor's couch, which was so luxurious and long that her feet did not even hang over the edge. Dr. Knox, Edward began, my problem this week is chiefly concerning restrooms. Ah, the good doctor sighed. Gravely, he drew a quick sketch of a restroom in his notebook. Naturally, I can't go into men's restrooms without feeling like an interloper, but on the other hand, every time I try to use a ladies' room, I get into trouble. Said Dr. Knox, drawing a quick sketch of a door marked ladies. 4 days ago, I went into the powder room of a department store, and the 3 middle-aged housewives came in and thought I was a man. As soon as I explained to them that I was really only a harmless dyke, the trouble began. You compulsively attacked them. Oh, heavens, no, indeed not. One of them turned on the water faucet and tried to drown me with paper towels, but the other 2 began screaming about how well did I know Gertrude Stein and what sort of underwear did I have on. And they took off my new cufflinks and socks for souvenirs. They had my head in the trash can and were cutting pieces off my shirt tail when luckily a policeman heard my calls for help and rushed in. He was able to divert their attention by shooting at me, thus giving me a chance to escape through the window. Carefully, Dr. Knox noted in his notebook, apparent suicide attempt after accosting girls in restroom. My child, he murmured in featherly tones, have no fear. You must trust us. We will cure you of this deadly affliction. And before you know it, you'll be all fluffy and wonderful with dear babies and a bridge club of your very own. He drew a quick sketch of a bridge club. Now let me see. I believe we estimated that after only 4 years of intensive therapy and 2 years of anti-intensive therapy, plus a few minor physical changes, and you'll be exactly the little girl we've always wanted you to be. Rapidly, Dr. Knox thumbed through an index on his desk. Yes. This year, the normal cup size is 56 inches and waist 12.5. Nothing a few well-placed hormones can't accomplish in these advanced times. How tall did you tell me you were? 6 feet 4 inches, replied Edward. Oh, Dr. Knox did some figuring. Yes, I'm afraid that will definitely entail extracting approximately 8 inches from each leg, including the kneecap. Standing a lot doesn't bother you, does it, my dear? Said Edward, who couldn't decide. I assure you, the surgeon I have in mind for you is remarkably successful. He leaned far back in his chair. Now tell me briefly what the word homosexuality means to you in your own words. Love, flowers, pearl, petal roses trembling, overdue on the lips, soft and juicy fruit, no teeth, no nasty spit, lips chewing oysters without grimy sand or whiskers, pastry, gingerbread, warm sweet bread, cinnamon toast poetry, justice, equality, higher wages, independent angel song. It means I can do what I want. No, my dear, Dr. Knox said, your disease has gotten completely out of control. We scientists know, of course, that it's highly pleasurable experience to take someone's penis or vagina into your mouth. It's pleasurable and enjoyable. Everyone knows this. But after you've taken 1,000 pleasurable penises or vaginas into your mouth and had 1,000 people take your pleasurable penis or vagina into their mouth, what have you accomplished? What have you got to show for it? Do you have a wife or children or husband or a house or a trip to Europe? Do you have a bridge club to show for it? No. You have only 1,000 pleasurable experiences to show for it. Do you see how you're missing the meaning of life? How sordid and depraved are these clandestine sexual escapades in parks and restrooms? I ask you. But sir, said Edward, I'm a woman. I don't have sexual escapades in parks or restrooms. I don't have 1,000 lovers. I have one lover. Yes, Dr. Knox flicked the ashes from his cigar onto the floor. Stick to the subject, my dear. We were in college then, Edward said. She came to me out of the silky midnight mist, her slips rustling like cow thieves, her hair blowing in the wind like Gabriel. Lying in my arms, harps played soft in dry firelight. Oh, Bach, oh, Brahms, oh, Buxtehude. How sweetly we got along, how well we got the woods pregnant with canaries and parakeets, barefoot in the grass, alas, pigeons. But it only lasted 10 years, and then she was gone, poof, like a puff of wheat. You see the folly of these brief physical embraces? But tell me the results of our experiment we arranged for you last session. Oh, yes, my real date. Well, I bought a dress and a wig and a girdle and a squeezy bodice. I did unspeakable things to my armpits with a razor. I had my hair done and my face done and my nails done, my roast done, my belly button done. And then you felt truly feminine. I felt truly immobilized. I could no longer run, walk, bend, stoop, move my arms, or spread my feet apart. Good. And, well, everything went pretty well during dinner, except my date was only 5'2". And, oh yes, one of my eyelashes fell into the soup. That wasn't too bad. I hardly noticed it going down. But then my other eyelash fell on my escort's sleeve, and he spent 5 minutes trying to kill it. Edward sighed. But the worst part came when we stood up to go. I rocked back on my heels as I pushed my chair back under the table and my shoes, You see, they were 3 inchers, raising me to 6'7", and with all my weight on those teeny little heels. Yes, yes. I drove the spokes all the way into the thick carpet and could no longer move. Oh, everyone was nice about it. My escort offered to get the check and to call in the morning to see how I made out. And the manager found a little saw and all that. But Dr. Knox, you must understand that my underwear was terribly binding and the room was hot. Yes, yes. So I fainted. I didn't mean to. I just did. That's how I got my ankles broken. Dr. Knox cleared his throat. It's obvious to me, young lady, that you have failed to control your PE. Oh, God, said Edward, glancing quickly at her crotch. I took a bath just before I came. This oral eroticism of yours is definitely rooted in penis envy, which showed when you deliberately castrated your date by publicly embarrassing him. Edward moaned. But strawberries, but lemon cream pie. Narcissism, Dr. Knox droned. Masochism, sadism, admit you want to kill your mother. Marshmallow bluebird, Edward groaned, eyes softly rolling, looking at the stars, April and May. Admit you want to possess your father. Mother substitute, breast suckle. Graham cracker subway, Edward writhed, slobbering. Pussy willow summer. Admit you have a smegmatic personality, Dr. Knox intoned. Edward rolled on the floor. I am vile. I am vile. Dr. Knox flicked a switch at his elbow, and immediately a picture of a beautiful woman appeared on the screen over Edward's head. The doctor pressed another switch, and electric shocks jolted through her spine. Edward screamed. He pressed another switch, stopping the flow of electricity. Another switch, and a photo of a gigantic erect male organ flashed into view, coated in powdered sugar. Dr. Knox handed Edward a lollipop. She sat up. I'm saved, she said, tonguing the lollipop. Your time is up, Dr. Knox said. Your check, please. Come back next week. Yes, sir, yes, sir, Edward said as she went out the brown door. In his notebook, Dr. Knox made a quick sketch of his bank. I am so grateful for the generation now that is refusing all of the boxes that were in that poem, refusing them in so many different creative ways. I want to end by reading a recent poem, very recent, like it's 24 hours old. That is something that I've hung on to in my life, whether I ever said it or not. Take your love into the difficult world. Take it without need of a shield. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. Open your clenched heart, uncurl your metal heart, heated and then annealed. Take your love into the difficult world. Let go the pattern, knitted, purled, zipped up, closed off, steeled. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled, believing in trees, sapling or gnarled, with buds to replenish the hungry field. Take your love into the difficult world, the difficult, angry, wounded hurl. Imagine planting love, the yield. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. What might to life be stirred? What could be staunched, healed? Take your love into the difficult world. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. And that ends my reading, Vickie.
Thank you, Judy. Let's take our love into the difficult world, everyone. Thank you all so much for your readings, for your work, for your heart work, for your activism, for your existence, which is like the very core of our resistance sometimes, right? Not every activism comes in all shapes and colors and ways of being. And the word is that way of being in activism for some of us here today. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the honor of being your MC. If you want to read more of my work, you can go to my website, VickieVertiz.com. Yeah, keep in touch. Thank you, Aunt Lute. Thank you, Emma. And bravísimas. Thank you, everyone. Felicidades.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Vickie. Thank you so much to all the readers. That was amazing and such medicine. And I think that's exactly what we need in these times. And also, oh my God, Judy, that I've never read that poem. That was so intense.
Which one was that?
The Edward one. I was
the Edward.
laughing at the police.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just everyone. Wow. This was such a perfect collection of people. Like everything felt so related. Thank you all so much for being here. Yeah. If you enjoyed this reading, please donate to Aunt Lute and that Give Out Day links. We can scoop up more funds to keep publishing, but also buy these books. These authors are amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to take a quick group picture if we all want to smile so I can save this moment. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your evening to everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.